Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Eddie Marcus here again. I've chosen to talk to you on the subject matter, Born Free. I would like to share with you that every human that was born on this earth was born free. Born free. But they came into a world that had been turned into a slave camp. And for the most part, they've all been trained to be slaves. What gives me the authority to speak to you in these terms? For those of you who believe in the Bible, you say Moses had a confrontation with God and a burning bush and a voice that was speaking to God, to Moses. Many of you have denied that and say that this didn't really occur at all. Well, I won't argue that with you. But I speak to you out of my own experience. Whether Moses had that confrontation with God or not, if God chose that time or Moses never existed, what God did do at a moment in time was expose the power of God to me, so that I know that there is a power that we can't see, that is aware of everything that's going on, and that power loves us. I know that because it was proven to me. And so I stand before you all of these years to say to you that there is a God. There is a God. Not all people were born to be a slave. Some of those people who were born not to be slaves, who were born in freedom and wanted to always live in freedom, when the natives were being persecuted and annihilated and wiped off the face of this earth, those who were born in freedom and lived in freedom. And I don't have to tell you the story. You know that it finally got to the point that some decided that we're dying and we won't even be recognized or known, so we will become slaves. And so they became slaves and still are slaves. The black trade from one continent to another, all of that was under the state of slavery. But some being transferred here were not born to be slaves. They jumped off the ships. That's how you know them. They died on the way. That's how you know them. They came here, and being beaten like Kunta Kinte was, they did not change. They looked for the moment to rebel. Whether they died or not, they were living in freedom. Every people, every individual have a right, a God-given right to defend themselves, not to be aggressive and attack others, unilaterally, as they would say, or with some other group. But every individual has the right to defend themselves. And yet, when we think about the Jews, the Holocaust, those who were killed were not born to live in slavery. But those who acquiesced, they were born to be slaves. They weren't born as a slave, but they were born to be slaves because that's what they are, slaves. And this is applicable to every race, every nationality, wherever it has existed. In the slavery days, they tell me something about a Willie Lynch letter, where they would mention certain things that would eradicate resistance to the slavery. One of the things they mentioned was where they took a rebellious young buck and brought him out before everybody, all the slaves, women and female and children. And they tie him to a horse going in opposite directions. They would tar and feather him and then pull him apart, fright the heck out of anybody who was thinking about rebelling. And mothers who loved their children saw this, and so they would teach their boys not to be rebellious because they were trying to protect them. But what they didn't know is that they were turning them into slaves. And that has continued up until this day. This is why you see young men dealing in illicit things, trying to survive. This is why you see young men with their pants all hanging down and up in their 30s and some in their 40s. They're still playing Xbox games, following around Pokemon Go, even today. Not concerned about anything that goes on in the world. Not aware that there are more important things that their parents turned their backs on. Yes, their parents couldn't take care of them and educate them and protect their health like they could because they were living in slavery. In slavery, you do what you're allowed to do. And the things that really had an impact or have an impact on life, they didn't even know about it because that message was kept from them. And so this is a continuation of hell, the state of hell. As I look here in the mirror every day, I think about the world and how ugly it can be and how ugly it is when you compare it to peace and prosperity and joy, when you compare it to paradise on earth, or when you compare it to heaven on earth. It is stinking. And yet, we have all of this slavery. You got the churches praising God, a God they know not of. The evidence is in the fact that they are all slaves. All churches in America are slaves. You see, no man, individual, no group, no nation, no people of the world can follow God following two directors who are going in opposite ways. You see the world the way it is and where it's going. Whether you're living in the 1% or anywhere down in that 99%, you see the way that the world is going. It is not going where everybody in every nation, every individual have peace and prosperity and joy. It's not happening that way. But it was made. Being born in freedom, coming into an earth that was given to you, and all of the abilities that the earth has to present was a given. You didn't do anything to it except use the talents that you have to extract from it, to do with as you have chosen to do, to create those things that are common amongst people: food, clothing, shelter, education, health care. And the way you were able to do it was to use those gifts that you have been given. And it didn't take any money to do that. There was no money. You see preachers today and public speakers and public servants, everybody talking about money and currency and the value of money, the manipulation of money. They're talking about all of these things as if money has got to be tied to the system. There was no money involved in all that God created. There is no money needed in anything that God has put together. All of the money comes from the what? What? It comes from the anti-God establishment. It comes from the distraction of God. Now, if you can't obey two masters, what that means? That means you choose one. If you go along with the ways of the world, whether you like it or not, you poke it in, thinking that a miraculous power is going to clear it up for you, then that means you are on that hellish expedition led by an anti-God spirit. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. The ones who are led by the Spirit of love, Spirit of God, are either dying, standing up for that, but they do the will of God. They follow God's laws. And all of these laws where the devil passed so he can control you. For instance, they used to stop you in traffic if you had a tail light broken or you were driving sporadically. Now they've been given reasons to be looking in your car to see if you got seatbelt, looking in your car to see if you're smoking, looking in your car to see if you're drinking a pop, looking in your car to see if you got your phone on.